Feels that way sometimes. Feels that way. Yes.
Yep, yep.
Great
So Mary,
partnership.
it's all yours. You go ahead and work your magic.
Awesome. Thanks, Vishal. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Vishal mentioned, our topic for discussion today is AP automation and expense management. And I'm going to demonstrate today and discuss this in the context specifically of Dynamics GP. However, there are, obviously other ERP systems that you might be using, and we have process flows that work very nicely with others as well. I'm going to focus the demonstration, however, on our integration with GP for AP automation and expense management today. So this is myself, Mary Miller. I head up the marketing and channel team, and I also have a partner account manager that works very closely with Vishal and Hector and the team at Optimus as well. So you could hear either of our names throughout your conversations with Optimus as it relates to QuickTag. We just like you to kind of have a face to put with the name and know who we are, know who you're working with. So the reason that we're gathered here for this discussion today and why we're going to talk about AP automation and expense management really kind of starts with why is this so important? What are the challenges that your business is facing today that's leading you down this path to consider automation? And then I'm going to spend quite a bit of time in the demonstration itself so that you can see how it works with GP, and then I'll have time at the end for questions. So if you do have questions in the course of this discussion, please put them into the Q&A box on your Zoom meeting window. So we'll have time to address those at the end. So if you've joined us before with QuickTag as part of the conversation, you know that we like to start with why. We like to start with the reasons that make your organization consider automation. So if you've attended a session like this before, you can go ahead and start filling in the blanks because you understand these pains, these challenges that organizations face from a document management standpoint and from an automation standpoint when they are still working with paper. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I could give you example after example of the amount of time wasted, 30 to 40%, by the way, in an AP team and HR team that is looking for time wasted, looking for documents that are stored in some physical filing cabinet or boxes or off-site storage or whatever, wherever you happen to store your paper documents. So step one, we want to get rid of the paper. Stop wasting that time. Step two, as you look to the bottlenecks and visibility talking points here on these graphics, what they represent are that documents, when dealt with paper-based, when you're dealing with a manual process using paper, you have no visibility. And when a paper document gets stuck in a process sitting on someone's desk because that person's on vacation, traveling for business, or what have you, you have no visibility into that workflow status. You don't know if an invoice or an expense report is even submitted, let alone whose queue it's in to take the next step for editing, approval, or whatever. So bottlenecks and lack of visibility certainly are challenges. And then as you grow, it's really difficult to keep up. We hear this all the time. Maybe you can relate. People want to know, should I hire another person or two, or should I automate? Well, eventually you can do the math, right? Eventually you're going to get to a point where hiring more people just because you're working with paper is going to cost more and more money, and it's not going to be worth it. The ROI is certainly there for AP automation. That way, if you do choose to hire those people, that's great. You can put them into an analyst position or a business finance role that is doing reporting and documentation of your processes and your budget and your planning, a much more strategic role than data entry and paper chasing. Would you not agree? So we really want to help you grow with process improvement and be able to comply, of course, with your regulatory requirements as well from a compliance standpoint. So those are just some of the reasons why. Again, you can think about the reasons in your organization that are really causing you to consider automation. Now, in addition to those challenges, those day-to-day frustrations and process bottlenecks, there are also real hard costs associated with managing your business on paper. Because what happens today? Invoices come into your organization, maybe in mail, maybe some in email. We're getting there, right? But a lot of them still come in the mail. Somebody opens them up in the mailroom, takes it over to typically an accounting person. What the flow we hear most common is it starts then in accounting. Accounting does some data entry, maybe they save it, and then they physically take that invoice to the person who needs to either edit it, approve it, fill in the stamp data, right? The GL code, the date, the approver. If there's a next person that needs to go on, they note that, please send to Vishal for final approval, whatever. And then that paper makes its way physically through your organization. I talked to someone just last week that still uses the inner office mail envelopes to route these invoices once they have come into AP because they're in multiple locations. So if you have that challenge, well, add another level of time, delay, and lack of visibility to that process, to that document in the process. So on average, we see that it can take 45 days, 45 business days from the time that invoice is physically received into your mailroom to the time that that invoice gets processed and approved. So now when you choose to pay it, of course, is up to you. But from the time it comes into your organization to the time that it's actually approved can take 45 days when you are doing that on paper. Very similar in an expense report situation. Sometimes even longer, depending on how long the trip is and how many receipts that you've got to gather up and find. God knows where they were buried, right? In our briefcases, in our backpacks, in our pockets, whatnot. So 45 days is a long time. There's a real cost that comes with that too, friends. There are organizations paying on average $15 per invoice to process them in this way, to process them manually. Now, when you're looking at a combination of paper invoices coming in the mail as well as email arrival for those invoices, that average is $15. If we take email out of the equation and we rely 100% on mailed invoices that come into our company on paper, that number goes up to about $23 per invoice. So you know how many invoices you process every month. Take that number, if it's all on paper, multiply by 23. That's the cost of your processing invoices manually. If you're doing it some email, some paper, multiply it by 15, and that's the cost of dealing with invoices in a paper-based environment, a paper-based process. When we add even a little bit of automation, some email notifications, some simple routing, that sort of thing, that number goes down, that cost goes down to about $6.70 per invoice. And if we add full automation, complete integration with our ERP system and everything, you can get that number down to $2.36. So the point is, there is true value. As you're building your business case, use these numbers, use these data points so that you can help your organization understand that there is true value in having invoice automation. And then you can put your staff back to work with higher functioning kind of skill sets. So let's switch gears for a second here and talk about expense reports. I'm going to demonstrate both of these solutions to you, but I want you to understand the why behind both of them. So we've talked about invoices. We've talked about manually routing an invoice for approval. Now we're going to talk a little bit about expense reports because our solution can truly do both and has modules that are specific for each solution. Okay, so expense reports, what's happening today? Well, organizations are using some combination in cases of cloud-based expense management tools. They're using an expense management that's part of their ERP system, or check these last two things out. You guys, more than 50% of companies are still using spreadsheets and scanned receipts and paper receipts being mailed to the AP department. So that's these two chunks of the pie on the left-hand side here, this 24 and 30%, those are the red and green that make up these last two bullet points here. So huge problem. And if you can relate to that, it's definitely time to start thinking about how we can automate our expense process as well. So then what do we do when we get that expense report created? Well, most times we send it to our direct manager or a combination of our direct manager and then maybe a second level approver if it's a higher level budget or a purchase that's over my approval limit or whatever, those kinds of things. So more than 58% of the people send it to the direct manager. Well, guess what? That direct manager happens to be traveling and your expense report is now sitting on their desk, collecting dust, getting buried with everything else that's coming in, and God knows when they will see it, right? So all of those environmental factors, those reasons that people are still doing it that way, lead to these challenges. These expense management challenges, very similar, as you can imagine, to the processing invoices manually, include things like this manual entry and routing of expense reports. 60% of organizations struggle with that. Maybe you can relate. That lack of visibility, same thing here. 51% of companies say, I can't see what I'm going to even be spending for travel and expense because I don't know when those receipts are going to come in, I don't know how much they're going to be for, and I don't have that end-to-end visibility. And certainly things getting lost and taking a long time. Those sorts of things tend to add up as well. And this has a solid cost to it that we can track as well. With expense reports processed manually, just like we talked about, paper, mailing receipts, taping them to an expense report, taking them over to the copy machine, pasting them down on the front of the glass, covering it up with a piece of paper. So of course you have a copy, right? We used to do this here. I've been in that environment. I know what that's like. It's not fun. That cost is about $26.60 per expense report when you do it that way. That, my friends, adds up very, very quickly, as you can see, and as you can do the math in your own organization of what that's like. So how are we going to deal with these problems? How are we going to address these challenges? Well, I'm going to walk you through a demonstration of, let me just switch to a different screen here. Michelle, help. Wait, oh, there we go. Okay. So now you should be seeing my GP environment here. I'm going to switch to a different screen here, and now we're going to walk through a demonstration. So what are we going to look at? Well, I showed GP just for 2 seconds here so that everybody's on the same page of where these transactions are going to end. What we're going to look at are invoices coming into our environment digitally. We will do some simple coding with them in the AP department. They'll get routed for approval, and upon final approval, they'll get created as transactions here inside of GP. Same thing with expense reports. So I just want to pull this up so that you understand this integration is very specifically built for Dynamics GP. We have a very similar integration for AP automation with Dynamics SL, where it creates the voucher and adjustment entry. And then with NAV and AX, we begin in those systems and route things for approval from an invoice standpoint. But our expense management solution works pretty much the same way with all of them and creates inside of GP, and with others, you can work with your partner to have them integrated. But I bring all that back to, we're going to show the integration specifically with GP for AP automation and expense management. So let's get started. So in my demo environment here, I just switched gears from GP into what we call the QuickTag Professional Client. Now, this professional client is specifically designed for Dynamics GP. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. We're just going to refresh our work queue here, and we're going to see that we've got some new invoices that just came in, okay? That number, that tag number just jumped from like 26 or something like that to 40. So somebody emailed in some new invoices for Mary. We can see at the upper left-hand corner. We're logged in as Mary. We're in the role of AP clerk, and I used to be an AP manager. I know what this is like. So this would be my job every day. I would come in, although back in that day, and for many of our customers, even today, I would deal with paper. I would open the envelopes, I would take them out, I would put the stamp on, I would do some initial data entry, save the transaction, and then walk around that piece of paper waiting for someone to give me that additional detail. So I knew how to complete the process. Well, we're going to look at all of that from a digital standpoint. So we have 40 invoices in step 1. Pretend we just took them out of the mail and we scanned them in. Or if we've gotten our vendors to come on board with us, we have encouraged them to email them in. We'll give you a simple email address where all of these invoices can be sent straight into QuickTag to get this process started, okay? So we've got 40 invoices waiting to be tagged, step 1. We have 28 in some sort of edit step. Maybe they need a GL code correction. Maybe they need a second level review to be routed for final approval. And then we've got 1 waiting for approval. Now, in the AP role, we're mostly going to have things in tag and edit stage. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with some invoices that are waiting for us to tag. We'll kick them off here. So this is exactly the same as invoices that come in and are sitting on your desk, although now they're digital. So we're going to walk through these. We'll just pick 1 or 2 and I'll show you some examples here. So if I look down this list on my left-hand side of my screen, I'm literally clicking from one invoice to the next, and it's displaying a new invoice at each one, and I can see it on the right-hand side of my screen. So let's say that Advanced Office Systems just called me. Maybe some of you have this experience, right? You just get a call and you say, hey, this invoice is clearly past due. I don't know, we can't let you guys order anything else because we got to get this invoice paid. Could you check into that for me? Well, now that I have digital access, I can come here and I quickly see, yes, I have an invoice for Advanced Office System. So what do I do with it? I right-click in my QuickTag professional client environment as the AP manager here, as the AP clerk, and I'm going to choose a workflow path. Now, I've got several in my demo environment. You're going to have one or two. We'll pick New Invoice Approver Selection because I can see who this invoice is from. I can see that it's addressed to somebody at Fabricam in our GP company, and I know that office supplies get approved by the same approver all the time. So I'm going to pick New Invoice Approver Selection. So that's all that means, is we're going to pick a workflow based on what you're looking at on this invoice, okay? Now, I'm going to do some simple data entry that's very connected to GP, but the second that I pick Fabricam in this company ID, I am now seeing that all of the rest of these fields become enabled. What does that mean? It means that QuickTag is looking up in GP to say, hey, find all of the data, the vendors and everything related to Fabricam. But let's talk about that for a second. If there are some of you on the phone who use multiple GP companies, think about this today, right? You're doing this manual data entry inside of GP. You're logging into GP Company 1. You're doing your data entry for those invoices. You're moving those to the next step in the process. You log out of GP. You log in as to GP as Company 2. Now you're going to do those invoices, log in, log out all day long. We take that off of the table. Even that bit of time savings is a significant enhancement to your workday if you use multiple companies in GP. Now, if you don't, this part's still going to be pretty straightforward and going to be real-time connected to GP. But if you do use multiple companies, keep that in mind. Okay, so we selected our company ID. Now, here's the rest. You can probably see by looking at this screen how much like GP this is, right? We even call it the payables transaction entry screen for a very specific reason. It's designed to look and feel and function right down to the lookups and the connectivity to emulate the GP environment. Okay, so here's all of my list of vendors. But I'm not going to pick from that list because when I tab to this vendor ID field, I type ADV just like I would in GP, and I hit tab. The rest of my header information populates, and I come over to my document number. Now, I'm going to select this and go ahead and do a copy paste and put it into my document number. But a word about that before we move on. I now have my header information, of course, populated for my invoice by selecting a company, doing a 3-letter type ahead for the vendor ID, and copying and paste my document number. If I wanted to, let's say I have a lot of invoices, and by a lot of invoices, I mean like 1,500, 2,000 or more, depending on the size of your AP staff. If I wanted to skip this step, even though it's only a few clicks, if I wanted to skip that and have OCR on the front end of this, I could do that as well. I'm going to show you how easy it is with just even a couple of lookups and data being entered here. But if you choose to have OCR on the front end of that, we offer that as well. It's a separate module, so there is a separate cost associated, of course, but it's a decision. It's something you can add or choose not to add depending on your invoice volume, the size of your team, and the needs of your business, okay? So I click then the payables distribution number, button rather, just like I would in GP, right? I'm going to do my GL entry. Now here's the really cool thing. If I have vendor defaults set up with GL codes on my vendor card in GP, these GL codes are going to come into me for me right here inside the QuickTag GP Pro client. So I don't need to do any additional coding. But if I did, I could look them up. I have access to my full account code structure for Fabricam, just like I would expect to find inside of GP. And I could make changes, add rows, whatever. Okay. So remember we picked the workflow, we said, oh, we're going to send this to the same person because we know who approves Advanced Office System. We know who approves office supplies. Well, in our case, we're going to pretend it's Mary CFO that does that. Mary CFO gets lots of invoices to approve. We've done some initial, data selection, data entry, but look at the depth of integration here. If you use a specific text schedule ID, if you're using multiple currencies, if you're using GP intercompany, all of those fields and functionality, just like in GP, are available to you here. That's just demonstration of the depth that we have with integration. We want this experience to be quick and easy. Most customers who start with this take one look at it and go, you don't even need to train my staff. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it really is that simple. People get it right away because it looks, feels, and functions just like GP. Now, let's say that I decide, you know, we get advanced office systems invoices a lot. So, because we're ordering supplies a lot. You probably order supplies on a regular basis, right? So do we. So we're going to check this little save as template box right there at the bottom, and we're going to call this tablet case monthly. Now I could put together a naming convention here where maybe I want to abbreviate my vendor at the beginning and call it AOS for Advanced Office Systems, tablet case monthly, or whatever. Something that's meaningful to me and to my team who receives invoices and kicks off this workflow. Now I'm explaining a lot of this, so it's taken us several minutes to walk through this data entry screen, but you know, just like when you're doing this data entry in GP, that tab, 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 fly, copy, paste, and you're done in like 30 seconds or less. So all of this is a very quick experience, but to make it even quicker for the next time I get an invoice from Advanced Office Systems, I'm going to save it as a template, and when I open that template, all of this data will be populated for me already. Now, we're going to click submit, but we're going to see a warning happen here when we do, because we do a duplicate check, another time-saving and frustration-avoiding kind of feature here, because often the person doing the data entry might not realize that invoice is already in the system. Maybe it hasn't been posted yet. Maybe that invoice is still being routed for approval. So QuickTag is going to do a lookup inside of GP and inside of QuickTag. So we're going to close this and say no and come back here and make it unique. We'll put today's date on it. And I'll throw my initials at the end there just in case I've done one on that date before. And now we're going to submit this invoice. So we have to make it unique. Now, I use one that I know is going to submit that error because I demonstrate with these invoices on a regular basis. But the reality is that an invoice could be attempted to be entered in your system twice, and that's not good. So we're going to let you know if it's in QuickTag or if it's in GP, and you can then make a business decision about how you want to handle that. Okay, now I mentioned that we'd take a quick look at templates. So we created one a second ago for Advanced Office System, but I see this next invoice here in my queue is from International Telephone. Well, chances are I have a template for International Telephone because we pay them every month. You know, we have a phone bill, right? So I'm going to look for a template associated with International Telephone, and I'll just do a quick lookup here and see what we can find. Yep, it looks like International Telephone right there. And I'm going to open this template. So the one that we created together, we did for AOS supplies for tablets. This one you can see is for our phone supplies. Now, all of this information, as I mentioned, is already populated. So I'm just going to put in something unique here to make that number, that document number, specific and unique. I'm going to change the date to be today, of course, because that we would expect to be different. But look at this, when I come into distributions, they're already there. They're already saved for me. Mary CFO is already saved for me as the approver. Now I submit and I'm done. That took us all about 3.2 seconds, right? So we move on to the next. You get the idea. You work through your queue. This can be an individual queue or a shared queue. So if you've got an AP team that, you know, 2 or 3 people maybe work through this on a regular basis, they can, I work through the next one, then Vishal takes the next, then Gabrielle, et cetera, et cetera. So the document owner would just be the AP team, or the AP indexing team will work with you to figure out what that should be called. Okay, so we have done this tag step on 2 different invoices now, one that we did some manual entry and submission for, and the other we used a template. You saw how fast it was in both cases, but specifically when we used the template feature, we were able to populate all of that data right up front. So what did we do? Well, we routed those invoices, remember, to Mary CFO because she's the approver for those invoices. So here they are right here at the top of my Mary CFO approver queue. I'm going to just clear the screen there. So I logged in Mary CFO logged into QuickTag Online because Mary CFO doesn't need the experience of the look and feel of GP. I'm not in GP on a regular basis as an approver, most likely. I get maybe an email notification or a link to come in online. So before we approve these, let's take a look at those emails. Maybe you saw we got notifications there. So we'll come to our email and look at this right here at the top of our email. We've got 2 email notifications that say, hey, Mary CFO, there's 2 invoices that are waiting for your attention. They require your review and attention. So if I had any comments, we would see them here. But as I scroll down, there's the one that we put my initials on at the end for Advanced Office Systems, $200. Yep, all looks good. That sounds right. Yeah. I can scroll through. I can even see the GL codes, make sure those are correct. And I can click approve or reject right here from my email. Now this is really handy when I'm traveling, right? Because I'm looking at my email on my phone. So I pull up my phone, I review the data, I even can look at the invoice. It's attached for me right here. I take a look, yes, in fact, we did order 5 cases. I do want to approve this invoice. I can go ahead and click approve or reject right there from email. Now, and here's the next one that we submitted just thereafter, the one that we used the template for the telephone. Okay, now as you can see though, as the CFO, I've got a lot of invoices that I'm going to approve. So if I choose to log in to do this experience instead of doing it from my phone, I have the same options here. I can view the invoice on the right. I can see the workflow history. I can see who in accounting indexed this invoice. I can see the stage that it's waiting for me. If it went through an edit step, maybe after the indexer, before it came to me, I would see that here as well. I can see the GL codes very quickly. Now let me pause here for a moment. If we were using something like binary stream multi-entity management or key to act job cost or some analytical accounting, intercompany, all of those additional GL code dimensions or data would appear for me too right here in the review and or edit step if I was an editor before I was approving this. So I have this full visibility into this invoice, the process that it's been through so far, and of course that it's waiting for me to approve, reject, or delegate. Now why would I delegate? Let's say that I get this invoice and I go, you know what, this really isn't supposed to come out of my budget, it's supposed to go to somebody else. So I can just pick somebody else in my list and delegate it to them, and it takes the invoice out of my work queue as CFO and moves it to whoever the next person in that process should be. For demo purposes, we're going to move it along. If we reject, of course, we have to put comments, but they're optional if we're going to approve it. We'll put some in here just for fun. We'll say, Vishal said, please rush. So we'll be able to follow that along now in our workflow history because Vishal wants to make sure we get this paid right away. He needs those tablet cases. And so that invoice now disappeared out of my queue, and the next one, of course, is waiting for me here with the telephone bill. And again, I can see the GL codes, the workflow history, etc. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, to pay, if I could type, and we'll approve that one as well. Again, comments are optional there, but we'll put them in just for fun so we can follow it along. Now, remember, we've taken 2 steps with this invoice. It came in our case, we emailed them in, but they could have been mailed and scanned. They could have been sent ideally directly from the vendor to that email address. That's going to put them into the work queue in QuickTag. And we did some initial data entry. Then we used a template to fill in that data for us, and we submitted both of those invoices for review and approval. The CFO has now reviewed and approved them and submitted them for creation inside of GP. So now we're going to put our AP hat back on and log into GP. So our first step, we were the AP person. Our second step, we were the CFO. And now we're back to the AP role of dealing with these invoices that have been approved. So check this out. People really, really love this because when they come into GP, again, this experience is so seamless for them. All of these invoices that are in the QuickTag work queue, you may have noticed we attached to the additional menu. We'll take a look at that again in a second. All of the invoices that are in this work queue have been approved. We can rest assured that if we see it here, it has gone through workflow. I can hover over that, see the GL codes. I can right-click and view the document. I can take a look at that just to get comfortable with it. I can scroll over here if I want to see all of the data. I can right-click and view the details. I've got lots of options as a validation source to say, yes, this is in fact the invoice that I'm expecting to pay, or a number of them, right? Maybe we're going to put both of those that we just routed for approval into a batch. Maybe we're going to put all of these into a batch. We select them just like we do in any other Microsoft tool, really. But I'm just going to pick the one that we said that Vishal wants us to rush. So we're going to put this into a batch. Now, this can go into a specific batch that's already created. You can select from your open batches, or you can create a new batch by naming it, or you can let GP default and put in a new batch. So I'm just going to put here 05, what's today, the 19th, and we'll put my initials there so we can track that along as well. We'll create a new batch. Clearly we need to do a little bit of batch cleanup, but you guys know how that goes, right? So we'll close then out of the work queue that's attached on the additional menu, and then we'll take a look. The rest of the options for QuickTag, Tag, View, Search, those are part of our core document management functionality. They also come along with any automation solution, payables, expense, and the like. So we've looked at the work queue, we've created that invoice into a payables batch. So now we'll just look it up and find it here in our list. And it will be in its own little batch here, because I called it 005. Now, why did I do that? Because it's going to take a little while. There we go. I could have typed ahead, I guess, and looked for the batch number. But again, I've got too many open batches. That's a different problem for a different day. But for right now, we'll open this transaction as it was submitted with final approval, because we know if it gets to the QuickTag work queue inside a GP, it has gone through as many levels of approval as are necessary before we would create. The equivalent of us walking it from person 1 to person 2 to person 3 or whatever, if it was a physical piece of paper. No more of that, right? No more paper. We're going to take this process and make it automated now. So upon completion of this process, our transaction gets created. Check this out. When we click our GL distributions, they're already there for us. If we were using one of those other things I mentioned, intercompany, binary stream mem, key to act, all of that, that would be visible for us here. And specifically, if you're using binary stream mem because you have multiple entities and you're using that feature to bring them all into one instance, we would create that due to, due from transaction for you here at the GL distribution level as well. So you really get full end-to-end AP automation. And check this out. I click additional now, I go to view documents, and that invoice is now forever and always attached and associated to this transaction, but it is stored in QuickTag. Why is that important? Well, it's important for two reasons. One, it's going to be accessible to me in QuickTag, whether I'm a GP user or not, so I can search it, find it, share it as I need to. But the other thing is, I am not storing it in my GP database like I am with something like DocAttach, where I have to know which transaction that document is associated with, and good luck finding it when you ever need to in the future, okay? So we're going to make that accessible, that document accessible in QuickTag, but still stored right here inside of GP through QuickTag. But check this out. So when we do need to find it, let's say we're going to search that document. Again, this is a QuickTag functionality inside of GP. This is what we call global search. You get this with our core document management, by the way, as well. It's just something that I think works really nicely to demonstrate when I'm showing it after an AP workflow, because I can find the document that we just submitted. So you know the challenge, right, of whether you've scanned something in, stored it, put it in a file cabinet, whatever. Now you need to look that up for audit purposes, or somebody needs the GL codes and can't remember, or who needs to approve this or whatnot. Lots of reasons we need to look for things, right? So we can now click the search option on the additional menu and look for that word tablet in document content. So I changed this from filing information, you know, the default information, right? Vendor and dollar amount and GL codes, things like that, the metadata associated with the transaction, to document content. So we want to look in the content of the document. And we're going to say, well, we know that it's in Fabricam, or we think it's in Fabricam. We could check in all of them if we wanted to. We're going to look by index date. We know that we ordered tablets sometime, let's say, in the last couple months. Maybe we don't remember when we ordered those tablets, but we've got to order some more, and we don't know who we ordered them from. So look at this. I do this search inside of GP using QuickTag. You can see down here, powered by QuickTag. And we now have that visibility to the document that we just created. There's all the data. I can right click, I can view the document. There it is. And I can send it to somebody. How many times do you get that phone call, right? Somebody in another department, hey, where do we order those from? I need to order some more, and can you just send me the invoice so that I can look at it myself, and I'll call the person, I'll stop bugging you. Well, sure, I'll send it to Mary at imagetag.com and say, here you go. And off it goes. So we are now connected to your Outlook system through GP using QuickTag to be able to let people self-serve. Find this information in seconds and send it to other people in your organization. Now, take that to the next level and just give them access to QuickTag. They can search and find till their heart's content. Even if they are not a GP user, they'll have access to this if you want them to. They don't have to, but they can if you want them to. And of course, if they meet your company security and privacy requirements and that sort of thing. Okay, so now we have looked at invoice automation from invoices coming into a work queue in the GP professional client. Looked and felt just like GP, right? We clicked submit, we saved it as a template. That invoice routed for approval to the CFO. And now that transaction has been created with the document associated and visible inside of GP. Now, when I go back over to QuickTag, let's just hop over to Mary's view, that Mary AP view again, and see what her experience is like. Let's say that she gets that same question, right? Where is that transaction? Where is that document? I need to find it. She could just as easily search right here in QuickTag, or she can just come into what we call the digital drawer in QuickTag for the payables transaction entry in GP. And there's our document. We can view it here. We can see the workflow history. We can see who did what when. Vishal said, please rush. That's the one we were just working with. We can see the GL codes, drill into that, all of that. And we can email it straight from here as well. Now, there's our email from Mary. That's nice. So a quick note about this email from QuickTag feature. Think about this for a second. You've got vendors that have maybe contracts that are coming up for renewal, or you've got other parts of the organization, other people in the organization who might need access to this document at some point in the future. Maybe it's an invoice, maybe it's a tax document, maybe it's a contract, maybe an addendum, maybe a renewal notification of some kind. We can set this document to email at some future date to whoever it is that needs it right here from within QuickTag as well. So you really are getting kind of a 2-for-1. You're getting the full value of that invoice automation end-to-end coming into your system, routing for approval, creating in GP, and all of the benefits of document management, storage, access, visibility. And think about this for your non-GP users, right? So I'm showing you my 4 favorite drawers that are connected in GP. Well, remember I said our GP integration is very deep. On the left-hand side here, I have a subset of the 79 different screens inside of GP that with QuickTag you can tag documents, view documents, and search documents, just like we did together at the end of that AP process, okay? So we've looked at AP automation. We took a little detour here, stopped and talked about document management for a second, again, inside of QuickTag as it's integrated to GP. And now we're going to switch for a moment into quick expense. So it's going to end in the same way that the invoice that we just did. So spoiler alert, spoiler alert, it's going to go through that same create process inside of GP at the end, which is super cool because that way our expense reports are now also going to be stored and accessible for us inside of GP or not. Okay, so we'll switch to our quick expense tab here inside of QuickTag. Remember, I'm still logged in as Mary, so I'm still in the AP role now, okay? So what does this mean? Well, in AP, my responsibilities for expense reports are reconciling those that have corporate card transactions. I'll show you what that means in a second. And I have to take a look and review all of the expense reports that get submitted, even if they've been approved by other people, because I need to make sure that, you know, they're for the right amount and that they were coded correctly and that they say what they're supposed to say and that it's actually an expense that the company wants to approve. Because what happens, right? You submit your expense report, your manager takes a look at it for 2 seconds. They go, yeah, looks good. It's not over $10,000 or whatever your corporate limit is, and they don't have anything on here that looks really crazy to me. So they sign it and they move it on to the next person. Well, in a digital environment, there's a little bit greater level of accountability because there's more information that's presented, including the receipts and the data, and there's searchability and drill down and all of that kind of stuff to see it at your fingertips. So that's one aspect. And then the other is that somebody else is going to immediately see this. Somebody else in accounting is going to be that final checkpoint in most cases before that expense report really gets to its final step of being paid. So as an AP person, I'm going to have the responsibility of being that double check, right? Doing the lookup of all of the expense reports that have come in, and I'm responsible for reconciling, making sure that they actually should go into GP. So let's go back to the beginning. As an AP person, I can see here that I too have some incomplete receipts, so I might also travel for the company. I can see on my left-hand side of my dashboard, I have receipts. I have 16 that are incomplete. That means I've got some data entry to do with them. I have 14 that are pending submission. That means they've already been put into an expense report. That means they're sitting in one of these 2 expense reports on the right-hand side. And I've got things that have already been approved, receipts that have already been approved. I can drill down and look at that till my heart's content if I want to. On the right-hand side of this, I see my expense reports. I have 2 that are pending submission. There they are. Got this little blue line right here. I have 1 that's pending approval. It shows me that here in this yellow box as well. And I can see who it's pending with. And I can be like, gosh, she's been on vacation a long time. I submitted this in March. What's going on over here? Now, I have visibility to these as the expense submitter, and I can, as the AP person, have this kind of visibility for anybody in the company who submits expense reports, if that's the way that my organization wants it to be set up, okay? And then down here, I have things that are pending my review. Now, this typically means as a manager review and approval, so as the AP person, that's not going to be our role. Our role is going to be after they've said it's approved, and then we're going to say, well, maybe we'll see about that. So what does this look like? Well, let's first look at the corporate credit card reconciliation process, because that's where I spend a lot of time and pull a lot of my hair out, let me tell you. So if I click into the Quick Expense Reconcile module, this is for people who carry a corporate credit card, and when they travel on behalf of the business or they have to go to the office supply store and purchase things, they use the corporate card. Now, those examples we just looked at in the dashboard were reimbursable, meaning I spent my own money, I submitted the expense report to the company, they're going to pay me back. So we handle those just fine as well. We'll talk about both of them. But the thing that we're going to look at next is the corporate credit card reconciliation. We'll circle back because they work very similarly from a submission process, but the reconciliation process to this is huge. It's really, really key for organizations that use corporate cards, and many of them do. So as the AP person, I see that I've got, 10, 11 people in my company who use corporate cards. Now, I'm going to log in to see what Mary's got going on, because I think it's time for her to submit her expense report, and I have not yet seen that data. Now, how am I going to get access to this data? Well, what happens today is that the AP person goes out to, in our case, it's Amex, it might be another bank or credit card provider that you use, and download that statement. I'm going to download the CSV from my bank, my vending, the person that we use for corporate credit cards, and I'm going to drag and drop it right here. Then what Quick Expense is going to do, it's going to segment that data and create a unique view for each one of these users, okay? So for Mary, we can come back over here and see pending statements. Let's see what she has going on. Check this out. She has 3 receipts that are missing the receipt status, missing receipt data. So these transactions came in off the corporate credit card. It's truly like magic. And again, I've been an AP person. I know what this is like, the paper, the chasing, the not knowing if anything is going to get coded ever. So when you upload that statement to Quick Expense, it puts all of this information into the user specific, meaning the card holder, the person that swiped the card at the store, at the restaurant, at the hotel or the airport or whatever, and gives you that data right here in one single view. So Mary Department Manager, in this case, is the person who carries that corporate card. We see that she has 3 transactions. We got those from our statement. We can see the date, the dollar amount, the description right from the statement. This is really, really time-saving, hugely valuable information. Because if I've got 10 users, right, 10 people in my company carry corporate cards, I'm going to see all of them, not just Mary's, of course. In my demo environment, I'm just showing you mine. But imagine this is 30, 50, whatever, different receipts. And I see they're missing. I see this is red. And I'm thinking, I'm a AP person. I've got to pay this bill pretty soon. I'm going to send Mary this notification. Send that missing receipt email so I can see now that email was sent. So Mary Department Manager is going to get a message that says, hey Mary, you're missing some receipts and I got to pay the bill. No, it's gonna say, here's the receipt data that we need from you in order to be able to reconcile our corporate card. Okay, so we see that data. So let's log in and see what Mary Department Manager sees and walk through that process together. Well, Mary Department Manager is about to get an email notification, but she knows because she carries a corporate card. She does this every month. So she knows she's going to come in here. She's going to look at her incomplete receipts and go, okay, I've got to get these in. There's that email notification. Now, the system, by the way, automatically sends that notification the second that statement is loaded into Quick Expense. But as the AP manager, you have the option to resend it at any time because you know who your stragglers are, right? You know the ones who always take too long and you've got to chase them the last day of the month before you pay the bill, etc. So it's really an optional reminder for you. Okay, so we're logged in as Mary Department Manager. We can see very clearly here we've got 3 receipts that we've got to do something with. Well, we just click this little hamburger menu and say Add Receipt Data. Now, because we know this payment type was a corporate card, we come over here to Payment Type, we select Amex Mary, and look at this. Here are the same 3 transactions that we have been notified that were on our corporate card statement that I need to choose from, that I need to add some information. So I select the $10 car ride because clearly I can see the receipt here, just like I could see the invoice before in that experience. And the only thing I need to tell the system is what department I'm in. Well, in this case, we'll say it's for services. And this is clearly a travel expense. And I can submit that line item then and go ahead and submit that receipt. So now I'm done with one of my receipts that I needed to add that data about, because all of the information that was on the statement, as soon as I pick the fact that this is a corporate card, comes right through. And this looks like my $55 dinner receipt, so it's a meal. All of that header information populates. Okay, so but let's say that I was, this $55 dinner, let's say that I was representing sales for part of it. Of course, it was a meal regardless, but let's say that $30 of it is going to go to sales, and that I've got then another line item that maybe $20 of it was going to go to support, because I also met with a customer during that dinner that had some, some product questions, and they really needed to know a little bit more information. So I'm going to split this out. I want my accounting team to know that this was not all one specific department that I had this client dinner for. So I'm going to submit that so I can add these line items as long as they total to the receipt amount that was part of the transaction data that came in from the corporate card, okay? So because that's what's going to get processed, that's what's going to get paid, because that's what I charged, right? I can tell accounting, however, that there were more than one department that I was representing when I had this client dinner, okay? So I can split those out. Now, we've entered entered information for 2 receipts then. So we'll switch back over to AP View. What does this look like for her now? Check this out. 2 of them are now green. 2 receipt status changed from missing to matched. There's just 1 outstanding now. And Mary Department Manager, God bless her, she was in the middle of doing it. She got called away. Now she's doing a project, and who knows when she's going to come back to this. I might need to send her that other missing email receipt again, but no, we'll go ahead and finish it together. So let's take a look at this. We'll add receipt data for this final one, and we will select payment type of Amex Mary. There's only 1 transaction left, so that's, of course, the one we're going to choose. And as soon as we do, there we go. As soon as we do, it's going to populate that line item. What did I do? Anyway, we'll come back to this in a second. Cancel that guy. Sometimes the system gets a little bit frustrated. I was probably taking too long, talking about it too much. Maybe didn't select it right. There we go. So if you click too fast, you know, like anything, the system wants you to stop and think about it. So we put in our department. Now what's happening here with this department selection and expense type is, again, remember, we are very deeply integrated to GP. This information, for me as the user, for Mary Department Manager, all I know is that I'm traveling on behalf of services, sales, support, or whatever, right? But on the back end, my accounting team cares about those GL codes. So we're now submitting this receipt. Mary Department Manager is done. She's all caught up, and I now have 0 incomplete receipts. Okay, let's take one last look over as AP Manager, refresh that, and go, look at that. All 3 are matched. They're green. They're submitted. Okay, I can breathe a sigh of relief. We're going to be able to pay the bill on time. Great, Mary's catching up with us. Good job. Now, I have this information. Where did it go? It created, Quick Expense created the expense report for me. How simple is that? We see it right here, pending submission, $365. So we're going to take a look at this, just make sure that we got all of our receipts in here, and go ahead and send it for approval, because as the user, as the person who carries that card that charges on behalf of the company, I don't need to create an expense report. I don't need to go do anything. All I needed to do was send in my receipts. Well, how did those receipts get there? At the time that I had those meetings, you could clearly see I had a picture of a receipt sitting on a table. I took a picture and I sent it into Quick Expense. My airline receipt, I grabbed a screenshot. I sent it into Quick Expense. My Uber receipt, I did a screenshot right on my phone. I sent it into Quick Expense. So as I'm incurring those receipts through the month, I simply send them in. Now, if they're corporate card transactions, the system knows that because they're on my Amex statement. If they're reimbursable, I send them into the same place. I'm just going to tag them a little bit differently. I have to give it a little bit more information because it doesn't have a statement to compare to before those things get processed. Okay? But as Mary Department Manager, now we're done. We have no more incomplete receipts. Let's take a look back as Mary AP Manager. Now we can see that they were matched. We saw that view a second ago. But now I refresh and I see they're pending approval. So remember that visibility we talked about, having complete visibility at every step in the process? Your accounting team is the one that has to deal with that pain, right? They're the ones who have to pay the bills. They're the ones who need to know, when am I going to get this detail so that I can pay these invoices and process these expense reports, etc. Okay, so I have that visibility here. So Mary Department Manager sent in her expense report. She's done. She's back to doing whatever it is that she was working on. So we sent it, as you might guess, to Mary CFO. So now we're going to switch back over to our Mary CFO hat, do a quick refresh here, as she has visibility now into this expense report that's pending her review. And when I click that task now, I can see this expense report, very nice, clean presentation in an HTML view on the right-hand side of my screen. I can drill down. I can even look at the image if I want to. I can see that in that one, it looks like meals was split out. Yeah, it looks like I've got $30 there for sales meals and support. Okay, I get it. All of this looks legit. I can go ahead and approve. But I also, just like we did with the invoice rather, I also get an expense report email for approval. So again, I'm Mary CFO, I'm out on the road, I'm traveling. I look at this on my phone, I scroll down, I see this same information presented very nicely to me. I can open up the HTML and look at all the images and the detail if I want to. And I can see all of that detail there as the same information, again, the receipt images, the line items and all of that. But if I want to approve that on my phone via email or via email wherever I am really, I can do that just by clicking approve or reject right here from the email. But again, we'll go ahead and do it in the online environment since that's where we are spending most of our time, and we can approve or reject. Now, what's interesting about this is I can also approve or reject at the line item level. Now, in our scenario, we're processing an expense report that was submitted by a department manager who was using a corporate card. So why would I reject this? Well, I might reject it if I say, hey, no, that support thing, that wasn't supposed to be paid for by the company, and you you coded this wrong, basically. You classified this wrong. That's not a company expense. You paid for it with your Amex, but I'm going to reject it and put some comments in here that says, hey, AP, take this out of their payroll or work out something else. They got to pay this back. So, I mean, it's going to be an extreme probably situation where I'm not going to approve a corporate card transaction because they're going to have to go back and fix it before we can complete the process here. But let's say this was a reimbursable expense report, and I might say, no, I'm not going to pay that $500 dinner. That was a little bit over the top. You need to get your spending under control and manage our, meet our budget requirements. Again, access to that information at my fingertips with full visibility. Since this is a corporate card, we're going to go ahead and approve it. So we'll click here, approve expense report. But I can, if I want to, approve or reject at the line item level. Now that's, again, more specific for those that are reimbursable. But in a corporate card environment, we have that option as well. Now, before that bill could fully be processed and paid, we'd want it to all be sent back in and reconciled. And of course, AP would get that notification. Department manager would get a notification, hey, you need to fix this. Again, communication, visibility, all along every step of the way, okay? So Mary CFO has now, in fact, approved Mary Department Manager's expense report, and her queue is now empty. Mary Department Manager, when we come back over here, we can now see that it is pending approval. Okay, she's gone ahead and submitted it, and it's been approved rather. So we can look here to see if it's approved. Yep, there it is. It's been approved and sent for payment. So again, everybody in the process has complete visibility. Now, Mary AP, we'll take one final look here. We see that this has all been approved. So full visibility end to end throughout that life cycle. So what happened next to that expense report? Well, Mary Department Manager, she incurred the expenses. She swiped the Amex card. She took a picture of the receipts and sent them in. The system basically created the expense report for her after she told it what department those expenses were for and what expense type they were, travel, meals, etc. That system then created the expense report for her, sent it to the CFO for approval, and now that it has been approved, guess what? We're right back in GP. We come to the QuickTag work queue inside the payables transaction entry. And let's see, our quick expense report here is right here at the bottom. We can view the document if we want to. Again, there's that nice clean HTML file with the receipts associated. We can see the purchases amount, and we can see who the expense report is for. We can drill down and even see the images again if we want to. All of this data at our fingertips. But when we go back to the GP experience here, all of this is ready to be created into a payables batch, just like the invoice was. Why? Because we have converted this expense report to be an invoice. Look at this. When I hover now, I see GL codes. When did you see me enter GL codes? We didn't enter GL codes together. How'd that get there? Well, what Quick Expense does is, again, due to our integration with GP, is convert that data. Professional services is department code XYZ. Sales is code XYZ, ABC, whatever. And we convert that data right here as it gets created as an invoice. And we can see all the details just like we could in the invoice view as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that one into a batch. We'll put this into my Quick Expense batch here. And it'll disappear out of the work queue just like the invoice did. We'll come in and look up the voucher number. And it's going to be closer to the top this time because I didn't put it in one that was a million miles away. And when we select this transaction, now we can clearly see all of the information is populated for us. The GL distributions are populated for us. And when we click Additional View Documents, that same HTML with all the data, with all the receipts, all of that visibility is part of that file. So end-to-end expense management, end-to-end AP automation, document management included as the foundation for that process and for anybody who needs to tag and view and search. Remember I said 79 different screens inside of GP you can tag, view, and search using that document management functionality for GP. And most of them are in, the purchasing and financial modules, but they're also in vendors and HR and sales. So there's lots of places. Journal entries is common. So there's lots of places that today, if you have paper and you think you need to associate it with a GP transaction, you can do it using QuickTag and then have that visibility inside of QuickTag as well. So now I'm going to switch back over to our slides here. and walk through just a few more talking points to highlight what we've just covered already. And when I say, again, deep integration, you see that you can have that experience from an AP automation, kicking off workflow in an environment that looks and feels just like GP. Well, in addition to that, if in fact you do still have paper and you need to scan it into the system, we did a document management webinar just a few weeks ago, so we can certainly share that recording with you, but I went into more detail there about how the document management functionality works. Certainly you can still get paper and email and scanned documents into the system. And when you add workflow to that, you have an end-to-end process that looks and feels and functions much like GP. So all of that is going to minimize the time that you spend, it's going to increase your visibility, and it's going to give your accounting users this seamless flow of status. They're going to see the entire process, enter the data, have it edited or approved, integrated with the system, have that transaction created with the document stored and visible. Same thing for SL. We walked through the experience with GP together today, but just understand we have a professional client for SL, if that happens to be the system you're using, that goes through the same project, non-project, purchase order, non-purchase order. All of those invoice types are supported in SL and ends with a voucher and adjustment creation. For expenses, we looked at the system that's deeply integrated with GP. However, if you're using another system and you want that export file at the end of the process to be sent to some other ERP system, we have the opportunity to do that as well. But for this receipt capture, let me just spend a second talking about this. Today, when I take a picture of a receipt that I'm going to send into Quick Expense and do that coding that we looked at together, I do it just with my phone. Tomorrow, almost literally, because at the end of the month of June, we'll have our mobile app available, and I'll be able to take a picture and enter some initial data right there from the mobile app. So it's super simple now to take a picture and send it in. We use an email notification to send that in today, and at the end of June, we'll have the mobile app that'll be available to do that as well. And we looked at the rest of this together, the creation of the expense report, the routing for approval, and then, of course, the transaction creation inside GP as well. And here are just some examples of email notifications, because this is key, right? You've got people, most likely the people incurring expense reports, incurring expenses for your business are traveling. Well, they live and die with their email, right? Typically even email on their phone. So all of this is going to save them a significant amount of time. It's going to get your corporate card bills paid faster, but it's also going to make your employees and contractors happier because they're going to get their reimbursable expense reports paid faster as well, and we're going to eliminate those bottlenecks along the way. So we would encourage you to think about, remember we started this conversation talking about digital transformation and specifically as it relates to AP automation and expense management. As you think about what that means for your organization, we would encourage you to think about how can I capture these documents, these receipts, these reports, whatever, digitally as soon as possible within my business? How can I use a system that's integrated very deeply with the ERP system that we rely on? Again, today we looked at GP. And how can I automate as many steps of that process as possible so that people don't have to chase paper and look up things in filing cabinets and boxes and offsite storage and the like? So those are the steps that we encourage you to do, and QuickTag supports all of them. We also support these technical integrations. We talked about a couple of them. Binary stream and key to act job cost. I showed you Dynamics GP, but we also integrate with purchase order rec creations with Workplace and RecLogic, and we have an integration to SalesPad if you happen to be using that as well. So when you're looking for a solution, make sure that it talks to all of the other systems that are related to your invoice processing. Now you might have other integrations that don't have anything to do with the AP process, and that's fine. But if you're using other integrations specifically for invoice processing and your AP workflow, then let's talk about those right away to make sure that we can integrate with them and work together, play nicely. So if you're not familiar with QuickTag, we have been around since 1997, so we're as old as one of my children. That's nice. He turned 22 this year as well. And we're a Microsoft Gold development partner. That's what makes us able to go as deeply as we do with the integration into the Dynamics ERP systems. And today, we've talked about, again, GP, and I showed you a little bit of SL. I mentioned Nav and AX. We're also going to have the integration for D365 F&O done at the beginning of third quarter as well. So if you're thinking about those things, then certainly let's chat about that as well. And we have more than 120,000 business users around the globe. So chances are we have customers that you can relate to, maybe some that you know. Here's what I like to share as our QuickTag family snapshot. I can't possibly fit logos for all of those 120,000 customers on this screen, but what I like to do is give you an idea of there isn't just a one size fits all. It's not just big companies, it's not just small companies, it's not just companies in a certain industry. While certainly healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, professional services, finance, that sort of thing have certain compliance requirements that make the automation aspects much more important, or at least as important as others. Every company who deals with paper, every company who has manual processes can benefit from having document management and process automation. So I shared just a few of these with you by way of example. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Vishal to see if we have any questions, but I would like to just highlight we do have a promotion for getting started with document management if that's something that you're looking at doing in the near term, and we'll get that out in an email to you. And you can always learn more about how we work together with Optimus by visiting quicktag.com/Optimus Business Transformation. We have a dedicated page that's specific to what we do with Optimus. I'll just pull this over here so you can see it really quick. There's a quick video there about how we work. We've got some ebooks, webinars, blogs, industry reports, and that sort of thing. So you can find more information at your fingertips.